Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So it is almost 3 in the morning. Everybody here is asleep, including the dogs, and my wife is upstairs. I wasn't feeling that great today, I wasn't even feeling great yesterday. And so my sleep schedule was somewhat off. I ended up dozing off and sleeping for hours. And so now it's 3 in the morning and I'm wide awake. So I got some videos done, but I wanted to have a live show. That said, this may be somewhat of a moot point because I don't know who's going to be up this early in the morning. I wish to talk about something though, and this probably should have been a show where I waited till people were on, but I do wish to talk about something. I've been tweeting a lot. I've been on Twitter right often, and one of the guys, I put out a thing saying, making this point that I didn't think Paul J asked Nina Turner certain questions. I thought it was somewhat of a safe interview. And making a similar critique of Jimmy Dore, saying, you know, I thought it was somewhat of a petite or tepid interview when he was going after having a conversation with Nomika Kantz. Now, yes, he was skeptical, fair enough, but there are certain questions that just demand to be asked, or there screams to be asked. You have a divide. You have one section of the electorate, one section of the left, who wants nothing to do with that party at all. And you have another section of the left that, to some degree, would agree with policy stuff that this faction that says we want nothing to do with that party would agree policy-wise with a lot of that stuff, but have this fundamentally different view that, like, the abused spouse, like the person who was kicked, like the wife who's stoned downstairs, continuously goes back to the abuser. He has a good heart. He has a good heart. I know I can change him. He has a good heart. Okay, he has a good heart. He asked me if I was grandstanding. Like it's like, are you criticizing in this way because you're trying to kind of advantage yourself? And it's like, no, not at all. Politics, the whole point of this, the whole reason that I started doing my show is because I would get annoyed at the way things were, and I would feel that there were certain conversations that weren't being had. And I felt that a lot of stuff massively lacked context. To me, politics is this thing of getting stuff done. Now, in this case, you have something that's clearly within the wheelhouse of the left, and you have a faction of the left who's trying to make an argument that people should get into the Democratic Party. You had 18 million people leave that party. They left those party for reasons, for damn good reasons. If you're trying to make this argument that you want people back into the party, then you need to explain yourself. And having tepid interviews or criticism of that is not just necessary, it's vital. It is vital and required. And look, I like all those people, by the way. Love me some, I've always said it, love me some Nina Turner. Love Paul J. I think Paul J is fucking awesome. I think he does a great job. Love Jimmy Dore. So it has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with, I put myself in their place and I say to myself, what is the thing that I absolutely want to know? Meaning, if you're trying to get people back into the party in this way, people are going to have questions, particularly people who are against what you're doing. Those people who are against what you're doing are not wrong for having those questions. Those people aren't wrong for being against what you're doing. They just have questions. It's not that they have a political, you know, it's not there's this bias of sorts. No, they have questions. They have earnest questions. If that's what you're trying to accomplish and those people are against what you're trying to accomplish, yeah, criticism, of course, is going to come from that. So when I criticize these guys in this way, and look, if I had the political clout to bring on any of those people to my show, those people would be on my show. So that's not it. You overestimate my capacity to get people on this show. Radical cynicism. Radical cynicism. I think radical cynicism is not just one of those things it's bad. I think it's required. If I lived in the 1950s and 60s, I would have grown up fundamentally trusting my government. I would have said that ultimately what the government says, what these authorities, what they say, I can believe, I can trust. I didn't grow up in the 60s and 50s. I grew up, 1970. I was born in the 70s. I have a radically different view of what government is, particularly with looking at of the last 20 years of my political awareness. Very different view. What my understanding of things is that the Democratic Party took on a false bargain and made the decision that it was going to work in the interests of corporations and corporate interests. It was going to take cash and it was going to do favors for that cash, essentially become courtesans. Now, the problem with this is you already had a party that was doing that. That party was called the Republican Party. And Democrats continuously use the rhetoric of FDR and all these other guys in this kind of Orwellian way of hiding that what they were doing was leaning towards corporate interests. With the caveat, understanding this kind of game way of doing things, of saying, well, wait a minute, where does labor have to go? Where does blacks have to go? Where does any of these other groups have to go? The more rabid and crazy Republicans get, ultimately, they're stuck with us. Oh, they have nowhere else to go. We have this awesome advantage where we can advantage ourselves leaning towards this corporate interest because we full well understand that our apathy is better than the fact that these other people are going to go after these demographics and these groups. At that point, the public became voiceless. The aspect of the public, the thing that was supposed to be able to articulate the political will of that group of the population, went away. It was a conversation between plutocrats. Now, my issue here is, I am supposed to believe that the Democratic Party represents something good and wholesome and that you guys are going to go in and change it. What I'm saying to you is, I don't understand why you believe that, and I don't understand what you're using as a basis for that belief system. I mean, ultimately, these guys talk one particular way, but put a knife in the back of labor and the 99%, going with Bill Clinton's administration, going with Obama administration, continue the trend. Didn't do anything about Bush in this case, was extraordinarily weak and essentially was a centrist president who, yes, passed the tepid Obamacare, but at the same token still left millions of people off the healthcare rolls. And was willing to put through TPP, tried hard, was going to put a knife in labor. What I'm getting at here is these demographics vote for the Democratic Party because they're held hostage. They're terrified of the Republican Party. Fear, in this case, has ruled the political process, with people voting just out of sheer terror. Voting out of sheer terror. Add to this, that in the last election, one of the guys who was running in that election was cheated. Outright and overtly cheated. So you've had a party that essentially has talked one particular way while doing the opposite of the way it was talking in this kind of Orwellian rhetoric between Clinton and Obama. Hope and change, which essentially was the opposite of those things. Just for the most part, status quo and continuity. Let's say it that way. I don't understand your optimism. And to culminate all of these years of talking one way but doing the opposite, essentially putting 95% of the wealth in the hands of the top 1%, that stat is fucking amazing to me. Not to mention continuing with the Bush policies. When I see that, and I see that there's a massive divergence between what Democrats say versus what Democrats do, that makes me somewhat skeptical of what they say. Let me say it that way. Add to that is they outright cheated a candidate. At the point where they outright cheated a candidate, for that entire year, they lied through their teeth saying, we're impartial, we're impartial, we're impartial. Okay, you caught us. We need to move on. We need to move on. Going in court saying we can lie when we want to lie. We can choose our candidate in the back room if we wanted to choose the candidate in the back room. This is the Democratic Party. This is the Democratic Party that these guys are trying to enter into. And it's trying to sheepdog progressives and lefties into. All of these people left the party. And you have all of these people, Nina Turner, Nomika, TYT, all of these groups trying to drag people back into this particular party. Now, I make the point that radical cynicism is as natural can be in a situation where you've been consistently and perpetually lied to. That's the point that I make. Whether that person is Nina Turner, whether that person is Nomiki, whether that person is TYT, whether that person is anybody, I don't care who that person is. If you're trying to bring people back into the Democratic Party, then there should be difficult questions for you to answer. I would say there should be difficult questions because radical cynicism is the most natural response to being persistently and perpetually lied to. I don't criticize them just for the sake of criticizing them. I criticize them because there's been a massive breach of trust with regards to the way this political apparatus works, with regards to the way that party works. Do you understand the level of income inequality in this country? The Republicans are passing a tax bill right now that's going to put $1.5 trillion of debt on the back of everybody in this country. Not to mention, in some cases, raising taxes on the middle class to give the rich a tax cut they don't need. 60% of what they're going to do is going to go to the top 1%. I said it before, Obama, 95% of the wealth to the top 1%. The best that Trump could do is 5%, and damn it, he's going to try to best him. He hates Obama that much that he's going to best him, even on this one. Now, the argument that Democrats are making is Trump and Russia, Trump and Nazis, Trump and Russia. Trump got peed on by a hooker. Oh, I'm sorry. Not Trump got peed on by a hooker. Trump let a hooker pee on the bed that Obama slept on while he watched. Back to Trump and Russia. You have the worst face of the capitalistic system that you've ever had in this country. The most rapacious group of Republicans that you've ever had in this country. And the conversation that you're having right now is Trump is sexist. Trump and Russia, Trump and Nazis, Trump is sexist. Either Democrats are fucking insane, or there's a reason why they leave alone that one particular conversation, the one brick that they have at their disposal in this thing of economics. There's a reason they left these issues of class off the table. Yes, they talk in a particular way, but the conversation that the Democratic Party used to be about was issues of class. The moment that Bill Clinton started taking that money, class was off the table. That plutocrat that was on MSNBC snarling that he told Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi to shut up about class. Shut up. We have the worst amount of income inequality that we've ever had in this country, up to the point of the Great Depression, if I'm not mistaken. And the conversation, these guys are trying to give more tax cuts to the top 1%. And the conversation that Democrats are having continuously avoids the conversation about class. Bernie Sanders has the conversation about class. That conversation seems to win. That conversation seems to get people jizzed up and, oh my God, yes, I like what that guy's selling. I like what he's saying. He's right. But that's not the conversation Democrats have. Now, either they're functionally insane or they're not having that conversation for very specific reasons. They're not having that conversation for very specific reasons because they're paid by the same people who are paying the Republicans. And ultimately, the last thing plutocrats like to hear about is conversations about their wealth and the income inequality that exists in this country. Talk about anything else other than that. Meaning, yes, they're going to look insane with Republicans trying to pass this tax bill that's going to rape over the public. And this thing that they still can't talk about is class. Talk about everything else. The issue is trust. The issue is trust. You have a parasitical system that has merged itself to your representative government. Meaning you no longer have a representative government. You have public relations specialists who essentially keep the range of debate between two areas and block out other parts of the debate because they don't necessarily want to have those conversations because the entire apparatus is fueled by the cash. And that particular cash does not want to have certain conversations or off the table. How can you trust an institution when you know that institution is just being bribed? How can you trust it? Like, I'm making this point that radical cynicism should be the natural point of view of anybody who's looking at politics in current American politics. Radical cynicism. I would say that's not necessarily a bad point of view. That is the point of view that an individual should have when they're looking at this stuff. I don't care if I like the person. I don't care that I like Paul J. I don't care that I like Nita Turner. I don't care that I like Bernie Sanders. Ultimately, you're doing something that I and everybody else who's looking at the process should be radically cynical about. And so when I ask questions like, is there a point when any of you, Turner, Nomi, TYT, is there any point where any of you say, okay, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. They gutted all the reforms that we put up, all of these things that we petitioned. They said, go away, we don't want this. Or they laugh at you, they throw their champagne on you when they're in the room and you're petitioning them or boarding the ship by putting this petition. Please, sir, accept our petition for rigging it by 60% less. Is there any point where you say, I'm done? And if they kick all of your reforms away, if they say go away, if they kick this down the can, and kick this can down the road, waiting until they get to the primaries or until they get close to the 2018 elections, and they make the determination that, look, we're going to win anyway. People are just terrified of Donald Trump. Our strategy has worked. Trump is going to eat your babies. If your leverage goes away, and if they say no to you, toss that stuff to the side. We're not getting rid of superdelegates. We're not opening primaries. Have a nice life. What do you do? That's what I want to know. I have a slew of questions, but that very specific one, what do you do? Is there any point where you accept, okay, they don't want to accept the fact that they've cheated us. They don't even want to acknowledge that they cheated. And now the reforms that came from that particular cheating, knowing full well that there's massive amount of disunity with 18 million people leaving the party. They don't want to have an autopsy. They don't want to talk about it. They just want to move the can down the road, and they just want to get to the next election. If they kick away your reforms, is there any point where you say, I'm done? And if there is no point where you would say, I'm done, if you are dim enter forever, then why do I have to change anything? Why do they need to change if there is no threat whatsoever for you ever leaving? Ultimately, you would still vote, you would still function, you would still play this sheepdog role, you would still in perpetuity do this particular role in perpetuity, regardless of what the party does. And what I'm saying is, if you're going to have any level of trust with anybody on the other side of this, meaning the people in the dim exit camp, they need to know that you're just not Democratic functionaries. That at some point you say, okay, you guys are right. You guys are right. We've been having this argument for the past 80 years, going back to FDR and Wallace. Yes, this party can only go but so far, and we need something else that's going to represent the interests of workers and the 99%. I'm just trying to get at this very specific point. If you're always in the camp, if they know that your vote is always going to be a canned thing, why would they change? You can scream at them all you want. If they know that you're always going to end up you giving them their vote, Democrat for life, what's the impetus to change? What's the impetus to change? Their legitimacy is governed by whether or not they can continue to get in an office. Losing 1,100 seats has created this tension of legitimacy, this crisis of legitimacy. Can't call yourself legitimate if you can't win a goddamn election. You've lost to reality shows. That's your leverage. That's the reason why your particular institution, the Reform Commission, is even in existence. Yes, this was the avatar, Bernie Sanders in this case. But ultimately, the tension that allowed you to even get that far, that foot into the door, was the belief that you could possibly leave and start something new. Or at the very least, you would balk and leave, and those 18 million people have left. They looked at it as an existential threat because it was an existential threat. If you don't have those people voting for you in your interest, you're not going to win. Just lost to reality shows. You're not going to win. You have a Union Reform Commission. Fair enough. What I'm getting at is, if those reforms are found to be insufficient and if those reforms don't go through, are you still dim enter forever? That's what I want to know. I am infinitely curious about that. I've seen Nina Turner make, this kind of winking at a third-party thing or winking at Draft Sanders and this other stuff. And you accept this as, okay, this sounds like a certain amount of politics where she's feigning interest in this other stuff. Is she feigning interest, or is that interest real? Is this one of those things where she's willing to say, okay, I am done. These people aren't going to change. These people don't want to listen to us. And do they understand that their leverage in this is the capacity to walk? Do they understand this? Do they understand that all of this stuff that is taking place in regards to the Unity Commission has come about in large part because they were terrified that people were going to leave? Those people already left. I'm just curious on how far it goes. That's all. And I still think this radical cynicism is the right approach to dealing with politics of today. You have a parasitical organism that's on your system. Capitalism. Essentially, these people are being bought and pulled in a particular direction. You shouldn't go with this idea. And I'll end it on this. Ideologies. You know, this truth and freedom and honesty and doing good rights, morality, right, wrong. Oh, none of this stuff applies in politics. Politics boils down to what does this person want to accomplish and what tools do they have at their disposal to accomplish it. Everything else is just an argument for whatever they're trying to accomplish. There is no there to this stuff. Person wants to go into a particular country to undermine that particular government. That person says, all right, we need to find a reason that would allow us to do X. Usually it's the goal. Everything else is just reasons to justify that particular goal or to do that goal. But usually it's at the goal. I need to undermine Syria. I need to come up with a reason that would allow me to undermine Syria. I need to attack Libya. I need to come up with a reason to attack Libya, and I need to sell it. The right wing would do it. The right wing would use different reasons. Democrats would do it. The Democrats would usually use humanitarian reasons. But ultimately, both of them are still attacking that country and destroying that country, and the end result is fundamentally the same. The end result is the same. Oh, I lost my place. I lost my place. God damn it, I lost my place. Well, I know what I was saying. Yeah, people have this idea, this kind of ideological idea of right and wrong and everything else. And they're shocked when it comes to politics and the shamelessness that these guys have. These guys are trying to get political power. The only thing that matters is how they get to that particular goal, whatever that particular goal is. Right, wrong, morality, none of it applies. None of it applies. I want to accomplish X. Power at that point is a means to an end. It is more important for me to get power in this case than it is for me to live by this other stuff. Religion, sexuality, race, all of these things will be leveraged and used in order to pursuit of that particular goal, whatever that particular goal is. So take that stuff off the table. When you look at this stuff, you should look at it from a radically cynical way, because that has a better chance of keeping people honest. Right now, if your politician is being bought, why do you believe that he's going to work in your best interests? He's getting bribed massive amounts of cash. Why do you believe he's going to work in your best interests? Why? Why? Why do you believe it? Why do you believe he has superhuman integrity where him getting huge amounts of cash in no way is changing the tenor of his votes or anything else? The Princeton study showed that ultimately what you as the public wants amounts to statistical noise in comparison to what people who are giving these guys cash wants. I don't criticize being an asshole. I want things to take place, and I want things accomplished. And I have no trust in that party at all. But I would make the argument that there is no reason to trust either one of the parties. And yeah, radical cynicism should be dealt with radical transparency. If you agree with me that trust is not something that you have earned, then why should it be given? Why should it be assumed? Radical cynicism. So yeah, I'm not criticizing them. It's not because I dislike them. It's just there's certain things I want to answer. There's certain things I want to answer. I think that gets to the heart of the matter of where do you as a person represent on this particular scale of what are you willing to settle for? And will you ever get to the point where you want something different? And you say, I want something that will represent the interests of labor and workers in a 99% in a full-throated way that is unapologetic in what it is. Because that's personally what I want. And I don't see that in the other party. They're passing the most rapacious tax bill, the theft, outright theft. And the argument Democrats are making is Trump and Russia, Trump is sexist, Trump and Nazis. I'll leave it at that. The problem is both, man. It's not one or the other. And the fact that Democrats can't have a conversation about class is telling. It's telling and it's damning. If you're going to sheepdog people into the party, shouldn't you at the very least know what you're sheepdogging those people into? I'm looking at the political climate right now, what's being what's going on what these guys are talking about. Talking about fucking nonsense. I mean, the Republicans are trying to rape the public in this massive theft. And they're talking about this ridiculousness. The issue that you need to be having the conversation about is class. And if you can't have that class because your donors are telling you to shut up, then there is no representation for workers. There's no representation for the 99% at that point. You have a 1% that for the most part controls the political apparatus, going so far as to tell the Democratic Party to shut up about something that's representative of the overwhelming majority of the population. They thought it was insane when Grover Norquist had these guys signing a tax pledge, signing that you would never raise taxes one day in your life if you're going to be in Congress and you're going to get our support. And yet, Democratic wheelhouse of capitalism, they've been cuckolded by their donors. They've been cuckolded by their donors. Shut up about this class stuff and find some other reason to go against Donald Trump. But do not bring up class. Do not do it. That's terrifying. That's terrifying. And that's not in the interest of the majority of the population. I'm saying you need to have a full-throated party, a party that can full-throated represent interests of labor. And if you have plutocrats in your party, you can't do it. You can't serve two masters. You need to pick a pony on which one you want to choose. And up to this point, the Democratic Party has obsequiously chosen wealth. They've obsequiously chosen wealth at the expense of labor. Look at the labor unions in this country. Look at the state of labor in this country. Look at the state of poverty in this country. And tell me that the people who were supposed to be representing their interests was representing their interests. I'm not wrong on this. Wow, there are people up. That's amazing. To be the Enriquez, we've been taught to be individuals atomized so that we, the people, have been eroded on purpose. So we do not have community and power. Yeah, we don't look at ourselves as being groups. We look at ourselves as being these individualistic things. Yeah. Holy shit, this ran immensely long. I'm sorry, guys. Trump won because people feared Hillary, even though that's what she preached. Yeah, they both was preaching fear. She really had no talking points and stealing the nomination from Bernie. Yeah, agreed. If she started aping Bernie Sanders' positions at one point, it was like, what? She gave a speech. If you remember when she was running, Bill Clinton was running around the country apologizing for his legacy. It was fucking amazing. He was like apologizing for the drug thing. He was apologizing for the destruction of Glass-Steagall, apologizing one thing after the next, the Telecommunications Act, all that stuff. At that point, you knew she was going to run. And yeah, it's fucking amazing. Yeah. Agreed. If you let them know you can be taken advantage of, then they would take advantage of you. Yes. But Nevada, yes. Yes, that's my point. Yes. Edward Stilwell, one of Hillary's private sayings. The reason I love Democrats so much is that they're so easy to manipulate. They're easy to manipulate because they're scared. Just hold these people fucking hostage. You have African Americans vote to, you have like 90% Democrat. That number blows me away. And complain about being taken advantage of while you're letting yourself being taken advantage of. That number is amazing. But you must understand, they vote that way in the same way that unions vote that way, in the same way that these other groups vote that way. They're terrified of the other guy. They've mistaken apathy as being some sort of virtue. Apathy is not a virtue. You're looking at this from a comparative standpoint. You've never seen somebody actually represent your interests. What you've seen is one party being completely obsequious to cash, and at that point being apathetic towards you. At least apathetic in an overt way. The other party is going to actively come after you, but you believe that Democrats' moderation is somehow better. That is not better. It's better from an incremental standpoint, but if you're talking about somebody who actively represents your interests, that is something fundamentally different. Something fundamentally different and uncommon to workers in this country, at least in the current day and age. Microsoft Word technical support. Good shit, Jamal. Fanny Be like, oh, thank you, Microsoft technical support. Slightly ironic, Microsoft Word technical support just did a typo. I know. Bullshit, man. What's happening? Vinny Strill. Third parties drive political discourse, not major parties, and nothing will change as long as third parties' voices are silenced. Dim enter is lose-lose because it does not address the root of the problem. They don't even allow... Do you know they didn't even do an autopsy? And Omika Kantz was being a little snappy with somebody who actually did do an autopsy, saying that guy should have shown up at some of the meetings. Your party should have done an autopsy. Why is that guy the one who's doing an autopsy? And if you can't even come to some recognition of, okay, we cheated and we lied, we fucked up. If you can't even own up to that, why do I expect you to change? Why do I expect you to change? It's like, recant your fucking sins. Uh-oh. George Pagog. Jamal, you're sexist, which is why... Wait a minute. George Pagog. Jamal, you sexist. Why is a hypothetical political being bought, described as being he? I'm so upset. I'm going to ignore your logic and dim enter because of how much I'm outraged. I've been called a rape apologist. That's the new one. Rape apologist. Somewhat of a slight tangent. Somebody wrote an article, and in writing an article, she attacked Jordan. The funny part is, I agreed with her basic premise on it. Like, I agreed that the guy was probably massively inappropriate. Fair enough. I mean, I'm saying likely because there's nobody to know. Nobody really did an investigation. You just have a bunch of people who are angry. And my take on this hasn't really changed. Yeah, he was a horn dog. And yeah, he's massively inappropriate at work. Rape? Yeah, I don't believe that. That's not what I've heard just from listening to everybody's testimony on it. And all of these people, none of them actually know. The most that they can say is he was massively inappropriate at work. Well, that's a little bit different than rape. That's a little bit different than rape. And so taking that perspective, the sane, objective perspective of this, somehow is tantamount to being a rape apologist. It's fucking amazing. Also, I was being real snarky, so there's that. I was being real snarky. Yeah, something like that, yeah. Orthidium. Not only that, but Democrats decided to cement the xenophobia as a political unification tool. Yes, yeah. And don't misunderstand me. This does go both ways. Both parties does this. And it's a terrifying thing, man. You have a political divide in this country where you have whites voting almost, to this magnificent degree on one party, and blacks voting to a magnificent degree on another party, with other races being LGBTQ and Hispanic. You have like a divide in this country in this way. Democrats have hardened this divide. Don't get me wrong, the races jumped into the Republican Party after the Civil Rights Act. Fair enough. Race has been a dividing tool. It's always been a political tool in this country. But that's either exacerbated or minimized based upon the politics of the occasion. If you have a snarling plutocrat telling Democrats to shut up about class, the one unifying thing is, guess what? Class. Because at the end of the day, 99% of the people are in the same boat economically. We may be different from a racial standpoint. I don't need you to understand me. I don't need you to understand my culture and all this other stuff. No, I'm perfectly okay with a certain amount of alienation in this sense. I do want you to respect these other cultures and respect me. And no, I don't want you being racist and everything else. So yes, I want the Democratic Party to stand up for identity in this way, but not to hug it to the exclusion of everything else. And I strongly suspect that they're hugging it to the exclusion of everything else because these snarling plutocrats say keep class off the table. Don't bring up class. That's off the table. No more credit cards being swiped down your ass cheeks. No more money in your G-strings. None of that stuff if you talk about class. So everything else is on the table other than that particular conversation. Even that's the conversation that Democrats had in their wheelhouse going back to the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. It's fucking amazing to me. That's my issue with this. So yeah, if you're going to hug class in this way, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get a pushback on this. You're going to get whites thinking to themselves, yeah, they're in this for them, not for us. And you're going to allow Republicans to, as batshit crazy and off the political spectrum as they are, to end up with this kind of weird cultural heritage argument where parties are aligned based on this kind of cultural identity of sorts. And you even got this other situation where you would have Democrats using like white as a pejorative in the same way that Republicans would use like black or something else as a pejorative. It's problematic. It's problematic. The point I try to make here, though, is they're not doing this because they're stupid. They're doing this because they're bribed. Stupid would be more, I could deal with stupid. Stupid, I would be more forgiving for that. But they're doing this because they're paid to do it. They're paid. They're bribed in this way. That snarling millionaire who's on television saying, "Shut up about class." Yeah, I take him at his word. I take him at his word. I suspect that when you're getting paid huge amounts of cash, the last thing that those people want you to do is bring up the fact that they're getting paid huge amounts of cash and that those other people are being massively advantaged at the things that are taking place from a political standpoint. So yeah. Agreed. Agreed. Mike Samara. Progressives need to stand up to liberals and tell the truth about the Democratic Party or start a new one. Mike Samara, agreed. And I think you have a group that has been, myself included, Door included. Yeah, agreed. Totally agreed. Independent outsider. Damn, I don't even understand me, much less anyone else. What? ATMs and ass cracks. Have you seen the thing where these guys at a stripper club? This is one of those old rap jokes where you're at a strip, and it's immensely sexist when you think of the imagery of it. But guys at a strip club. No, Family Guy, Stewie. Stewie's at a strip club. Stewie runs out of dollars. And he takes a credit card and slides it down the down the dancer's ass cheeks. She slaps the shit out of him for it. But he's looking at her ass cheeks like a credit card thing. It's fucking hilarious, this Family Guy. I try to make this point, and I use a euphemism because ultimately you're being bribed. You're dancing on a stage for the audience, but ultimately you're dancing because people are giving you dollars. They're stuffing stuff in your G-string. Yeah, you're being bribed. It's more sleazy than a strip club. The ultimate I thought you said the ultimate nullifier, the ultimate unifier class. Yeah, it is. You may hate my guts. Like, from a standpoint, from racially, you may be backwater as backward it can be. You may hate my guts. But by the same token, you may vote for somebody who I would also vote for if your economic interest was going to take the priority. You may say, well, I don't like that guy, but fuck, man, he's going to put money in my pocket, so I'm voting for that guy. One is a unifier. The other one is this kind of, this dividing the country up in this way. The other one is a division tactic. They believe that the country is farther along than what it is. During the civil rights movement, many whites didn't think there was anything wrong with civil rights. They thought everything was perfectly okay. They was like, these people are complaining for no reason. I don't see what their issue is. I don't think that the country is as far along as I think the Democrat thinks it is, where it can just purely win on this issue of identity, and these issues of economics are just off the table, and then they can just purely focus on identity. We can rape the public over because the distinction that we can show among Republicans is our identity, so we can call them rapists and sexist. Sexist and racist and homophobic and misogynistic. And the thing is, there's a faction of the party that is. You might have 30%, 40% of the party that is. Fair enough. But it's not the total. It's not the whole. And you have a lot of people who are not voting for these people, not because they're in this camp of being these hard right-wingers. They don't like you lying. They don't think that the voting process works. They don't see the point behind the process. And yeah, to some degree, focusing on class in this way has done a huge disservice to the political apparatus. Massive disservice. I agree, man. Maxine Waters, yeah, she lost her goddamn mind, man. She lost her mind. Pelosi, no, I don't think Pelosi has lost her mind. I think Pelosi looks at this as, these people will come back to us because we're going to scare the shit out of them about Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is going to play into that, scaring the shit out of the public. Yeah. We just need to learn from our past. Yes, that's true. And share the knowledge gained with each other. None of the cultural appropriation stuff. Share, learn, and grow. Lorem's agreed. Independent outsider. Bribes, even contracts, are only powerful when all parties get what they want. That's just it. Not all parties are going to get what they want. There's no such thing. Like, people try to use this euphoric language of like unifying the country, but there are factions in the country. There's some factions that are antagonistic towards each other. There's a natural faction with this regard to workers versus management, the elites versus everybody else. At the point where these guys co-opted the Democratic Party, and Democratic Party used the euphemism of a quote-unquote big tent to being captured by the 1%, then yeah, you have the antagonistic games. And these antagonistic games, there's no such thing as a win-win in this scenario. They've been raping over the public, they've been exploiting labor, and they've been advantaging themselves magnificently with this idea of corporate welfare and the tax code and everything else at the expense of everybody else. You can't have it both ways. Pick a pony. Pick a pony. Parties are not meant to be big tents. They have very explicit interests on the things that they want. Yes, they want to accrue majority in this case. But I make the point to you that the majority in this case that you're trying to accrue is based on this issue of economics. You can't make this argument of economics because you won't get your donors. You believe that you can't get elected without those people giving you all those millions of dollars. That's what this ultimately boils down to. That is your lease. That is your constraint. I'm saying it's not enough. You should have something that represents actual workers in this way. Our politicians are like two rats in a cage and one piece of corn. That's how they make us. Vinny Strill. When people turned on kings, where did they go? When people turned on kings, where did they go? You know, there's a fascinating part to this. So in British history, there's this there was a time where, you know, there was the king and everything else, and the king was appointed by God. And in addition to the king being appointed by God, they had this idea of parliament. So Parliament starts to accrue more and more power, more and more strength, and there became a point where Parliament actually went to war with the king. Parliament wins that war, and they still keep that king in office with this idea of, well, the king is appointed by God. The king has to be there. I mean, if the king is not there, what will we do? Mind you, the king has just lost the war. Their ideology was that strong, that specific, where there's no such thing as us existing without a king being in office. I'm making the point that we're the same way with regards to these idea of the elites, these 1%ers. Same thought, same difference. We think this stuff is being perfectly natural in the same way that they thought those things were being perfectly natural. The South thought slavery was perfectly natural in the same way that we think this kind of consumerist culture is being perfectly natural. You're giving the majority of the wealth to the top 1%. Understand what I mean? The resources of this particular world is going increasingly to a smaller and smaller fraction of the planet itself. Certainly that's not sane. Certainly that's not sane. You know, it's amazing. For every lie I learned something new, and I love Howard Zinn relearning history. Yes, Howard Zinn is amazing. Howard Zinn is amazing. Funny, comical, passionate, and it makes this moral force argument of just looking at the world and being honest with what you're looking at, if that makes sense. Like the rule that you apply to one, you apply to the other, if that makes sense. Yes, you're gonna have a certain point of view of the world, and your point of view can be, you know, one way or the other, but the consistency of the argument is the point that Howard Zinn would make. If you're looking at history and you're saying, well, it was wrong when these people did it, so it should be wrong when these people did it, and when these people do it, and when we do it. The we do it part is the one that becomes harder to do. Looking externally at a third party is easy, but oh, that guy's fucking up. That guy's fucking up. But looking at self, the media consistently lies on this. They completely obfuscate. They don't tell certain things. There's certain things that they leave out. They don't necessarily give context when they're having these conversations about history. And they continuously do this thing of this kind of rah-rah America in every situation, because by definition, according to media, what America does is correct and right. And we do it for good reasons. There's no reality to that. There's no reality to that. Howard Zinn is amazing. It's fucking amazing. Orthidium. HB is a strong believer in free speech. So people feel they can pretty much say anything, and I agree. Some will be racist, others will just be honest about their views. Yeah, I mean, but, you know, people can be honestly racist. Like, I don't, it's not that I am extraordinarily pro free speech. So let's bake that into the cake. Yes, some people are going to say things that are racist. Some people are going to say things that are insane. Some people are going to say things that are perfectly right. The problem with the society in this way, or dealing with this, is it's not necessarily the easiest thing to deal with. There are going to be times where a person says something that needs to be said, and the society is going to be completely against what that person is saying. You're in the middle of a red scare, and somebody comes out and says, this is fucking insane, we're going to go to war, and we're going to end all life on this planet, and that person, you look like a commie. You look like a commie. Free speech is immensely important. It's immensely important. Yeah, some people are going to say things that you don't like. Some people are going to say things that you don't like. What I gain resilience from in this is that for every racist that comes out and says something, you have a larger group of people who say, this is not us. Like, I think you have a large segment of the American population that harbor certain ideas and beliefs, etc., etc. I think those beliefs and ideas are exacerbated depending upon what's going on from economic standpoint and those people fearing about their status and situation. All that stuff is true. Yes, it's an amalgam of things. But in these cases where you have these people marching and everything else, ultimately what you see is a large number of people who come out saying, this is not us. They rebuff it. Yeah, people are going to have their say. You can't stop people from having their say. In fact, I don't think you should. Loyal opposition, which we don't have. Agreed. Loyal opposition. Agreed. We don't have that. We have this kind of antagonistic thing where people stab labor liberty in the kidney if they thought that it would allow them to advantage themselves in some way. Agreed. Orthidium, so you notice anything like that and want to speak up, I strongly suggest you challenge them. An environment of discussion and argument is encouraged, so take them on. Orthidium, he also has no problem reading super chats with nigger this and nigger that while laughing to himself and not even remotely disavowing such sentiments. I did challenge him. Yeah, that's where you lose me on that one, man. Yeah, I gotta be honest. If Hard Bastard think that's great, fucking awesome, yeah, he loses me on that. Totally. Like, it's nothing wrong with free speech. You know, you can have your say. But there's certain things where you're saying something a particular way in order to be offensive. If you're just saying to be offensive and hyperbolic, then the content of what you're saying is not necessarily part of the conversation. At that point, you're just trying to be an asshole. If HB is like, oh, this is funny and this is hilarious, then yeah, that's a fail. That's a fail. If you can't get stuff across, even stuff that's somewhat controversial and somewhat edgy, and you can't get it in a way that's not necessarily been offensive, then what you're saying, the content of what you're saying, at that particular moment, the way you're saying it, you're trying to get across something a little bit different than getting across some kind of message within the context of what you're saying. You're getting across a meta-narrative, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. It's like, if my wife fixes me a pie, and I don't eat pies. If my wife fixes cake and I eat the cake and I'm like, this is an interesting cake. Where did you get this from? Well, right off the bat, she knows at this point I don't like it. From this kind of weird cultural way, that's a way of saying I don't like it. You don't want to say you don't like it. You don't want to say that this cake sucks, but ultimately you say it in that particular way. Now, if I say, Jesus Christ, this cake sucks ass, well, I'm getting something across that's fundamentally different. Yes, in both cases, I've said I didn't like the cake. But in one way, I'm getting across this meta-narrative of politeness, whereas the other way, I'm being acerbic on purpose. If the conversation that you're having, if you're not necessarily trying to get across any particular idea, or you're saying something in a particular way, and you're being potentially harsh and antagonistic in the way that you're saying it, and you're saying it in a way that's acerbic, then come on. Certainly, it's like, is that really something you want to get behind? Do I really want to be in a conversation about whether rape is okay or not continuously? Like, there's certain hegemonic views of society that I actually think are positive. I do. And that's one of them. there's a certain amount of political correctness that greases the wheels in the way that people respond and deal with each other. Yeah, I don't necessarily like it in all cases. I think in some cases it goes massively too far. But I don't want to have to continuously have an argument about rape. It's like one person says rape is not okay. The other person says, no, dude, you're fucking insane. It's like, you're trying to police my speech, man. You're trying to police my speech. I'm trying to explain how awesome rape is, or you're trying to police my speech. Is that really the conversation you want to continuously have? Certainly, there are some things that have taken place in society with regards to the way people interact with one another, particularly with the standpoint of race, where a certain amount of respect is given. I would make that case with whether it was women or otherwise. It's just respecting that human beings are human beings, and how you interact and how you deal with those human beings, I think matters. I think it matters. If that's the language that HB thinks is fucking awesome, then yeah, he's lost me on that one. That's a fail to me. That's a massive, massive fail. To be there was amazing considering what he was up against. He was a miracle. Bullshit man. Orthidium, he basically made a rule that almost all super chats are allowed. He does screen a couple from Hitler did nothing wrong, for example, but rarely did he do so. Again, it's free speech. Wait a minute, why did he spare Hitler did nothing wrong? Why did he spare Hitler did nothing wrong? Bullshit man, I'm talking about regular chat. I'm trying to get across, why did he spare that one? Yeah, why did he spare that one? I mean, if you're going to make a rule, this is all super chats fair game. Why spare Hitler did nothing wrong? To beat the Enriquez, many of the neoliberal policies began with him before Reagan Revolution and before New Democrats, the roots of neoliberalism. I would say it goes before that. I would go all the way back to Truman, for being honest. If you want to say recent stuff, you can kind of make a case for Jimmy Carter. I mean, Jimmy Carter did back up the strong man that was in Iran. But yeah, Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was the first one to outraise a Republican. He was the first one to outraise a Republican. And he kicked that stuff in hyper gear. So yeah. Yeah. Copter Force. Isn't Hard Bastard an alt-right guy? I don't know. It's hard to pin him down sometimes. So yes, I want to say partially yes, but I don't think so, if that makes sense. I think he's, yeah, I don't know. Orthidium. Let's see. Besides, when you read a racist super chat, you don't have to laughably agree. Oh, that makes, yeah, you makes a good point. It's like, if somebody says something, even if you read it out, you don't necessarily have to say, oh, this is fucking awesome and hilarious. Yeah, fair enough. Microsoft Word technical support. And that is an important point, because it is a discussion about framing, not the cake. What? Not the cake? I'm torn between casting him as a latent racist, because I know in other regards he seems to hold intellectually responsible level. I don't think he's a racist. I mean, yeah, I chafe at that one. Yeah, I chafe at that one. I can be honest, I don't know who he is. So, fair enough. I have to be honest, though. I don't necessarily... There would be certain standards that I would have, because I don't think you can have a certain discourse at that point. If those are the super chats, and that's the conversation that you're having on your page, then I would say that, yes, you're probably going to have a very certain, specific, limited demographic of people and opinions on that particular page, if that's the range of discourse. Like, political correctness does have a point. How can you talk to somebody if they're being disrespectful to the way that they're talking to you? Regardless of what they're saying. If the meta-narrative of what they're saying is being just blatantly disrespectful, then yeah, you might fucking have a conversation. That's no conversation. That is a very particular tilted discussion. Yeah. I agree with you, Arthurian. I agree with you, man. To beat Enriquez, Carter turned his back on labor. Instead of focusing on high employment, he shifted to focus on inflation, a hallmark of neoliberalism. To beat Enriquez, it's like, make sure you keep, what is the thing called? Inflation down. Inflation going up lowers my money. Keep inflation down even if we don't have inflation. Yeah. I respect free speech, but I despise racists. Orthidium, yes, I agree. Full-throated agreement. Agreed. People have this conversation about like SJWs and whatnot, and it's like it's a range. It's like anything else. It's not this this is the line and so forth. No, that's the functions and ranges. There's certain conversations that you don't necessarily want to continuously have. I don't necessarily, like I said, I don't want to continuously have this argument about whether rape is okay. So, and same thing with race. I don't want to continuously have this argument on whether or not you should disrespect other races. Fucking insane. No. The hegemonic view, shifting those things. I appreciate that particular hegemonic view. You have some people who wants to be edgy. It's like, I want to be edgy and racist. All right, well, it's not really being edgy. You're just being racist. There's a difference to those things. It's like, why do you need to be blatantly disrespectful and trying to get a point across? Yeah, Ethereum, I agree, man. I agree. Bill, bullshit, man. Jamal, nah, Hitler did nothing wrong. Almost always gets a super chat, but he was getting cruel, crossing point from funny to offensive. So he said he'd hold off reading them. During stream, mainly because of YouTube censorship and how his videos may be affected on the upload. So he basically said he'd read them at the end of the article so he can cut the video when it gets uploaded. I guess the thing that Ethereum is making, or the point that Ethereum is making, bullshit, man, and a point that I agree with him on, if there's standards, like if he instituted certain standards on one case, how do you not necessarily inject those same standards when you're talking about being just overtly abusive? Imagine the case of him having certain people reading his chats or looking at his channel. I don't understand any African American that will look at his channel with him just bashing African Americans in this way. If the Hitler thing is like, okay, I can't read the Hitler chat. The Hitler chat bothers me, but the nigger one, not so much. You don't see how that can be taken a particular way. You don't see how that can be taken a particular way. Copter Force. And Reagan sure helped them out, didn't you? Yes, Reagan, yeah. You know, it's funny. Reagan, Bill Clinton got mad when Obama kind of made this point that Bill Clinton wasn't a transformative president. But Obama was right on this. Reagan was more transformative in this regard. The presidents who came behind Reagan, for the most part, as Democrats, took the mode of Ronald Reagan. Different military spending and all this other stuff. With these kind of centrist Republican policies, or what we would consider centrist, but at that time he was somewhat of a rabid right-winger. But they've taken the mold of Reagan. So yeah, Reagan had a certain influence. But yeah, they kicked that stuff into high gear. Kicked it in high gear. Bullshit, man. Ethereum. One thing HP would do is have a discussion with you about it. Ignore his audience. He largely can't control it. But if you want to challenge him, call in during his call-in show. Tabitha Enrique. As a group of Democrats never won back and continued to lose despite Democratic lip service. Nobody believed them at that point, Tabitha. Like, at that point, you've lost trust. You've massively lost trust with your audience. Like, imagine the situation where Bill Clinton passes NAFTA. I mean, just takes a knife and screws it into labor in this way. And yet, at no point did it stop the Democratic Party from acting as if they were representing labor. At no point. At no point. I had a friend of mine who's in a union, and I was like, why do you guys continuously support Democrats? And he's kind of made this point. Have you seen the other guys? Apathy is better than actually having these other guys come after you. I'm making this point. Apathy is not better. Apathy allows these guys to do whatever they want to you, meaning you have no control in this particular process. You support these guys and have no control in the process. You support them because you're terrified. They can do whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. You're terrified. You're a hostage at that point. So yeah. Jinho Choi. Good evening, Jamal. Bill Clinton is neoliberal, a man we would call a red Tory. Yeah, Tory. Yes. You know, it's funny. I've made this point that the Tories and the Democrats, for the most part, the same. When Democrats were in office, Obama and Cameron got along fabulously well. Fabulously well. Because they were, for the most part, the same thing. I try to get across to people that what you consider to be the Democratic Party in the United States is a right-wing party. In Britain, they don't know, man. They don't know. They don't know. They don't know. Yeah, they don't know. Reagan destroys the unions. Yes, he did. When he fired air traffic controllers, it gave corporations a big boost against workers. Edward Stilwell agreed, not to mention the passing of NAFTA, the TPP, or trying to pass the TPP, NAFTA, these free trade agreements. Yes. Yeah. You expanded the playing field. So you didn't have labor just within the bounds of the United States. Labor in the United States had to compete with people abroad who were making $3, $4 an hour. Those corporations sent those jobs overseas because those corporations wanted to maximize their profit. And in doing so, firing the workers in this particular country. Not to mention the robots are coming. The robots are coming. Bushman Jamal, Orthenium, I don't disagree with either of you, just sort of stating the circumstances how they are. People run channels as they wish, and the audience is totally free to judge them. Hey, I'm not telling them I should run this channel. I don't want that to be the case. People run their channels the way they want to run their channels. I don't have issues with people. How can I say this? And maybe I'm somewhat biased on this. I don't have issues with people stating their opinion. Like, so, if you and I are having a conversation, I have no issue with you giving me your honest opinion in regards to what you feel about something. Fair enough. And the people on my chat, I enjoy them giving their opinions, the converse opinion or anything else. And you've seen people challenge me all the time on the stuff that comes up. Fair enough. No issue. Fair enough. I love this thing of free speech, and I love people being able to articulate their views and say what they need to say. There's a catch. There's one caveat to this. You can't really say what you need to say if somebody is being abusive. Meaning, yes, there's a certain degree or a certain level where it becomes just this clear sign of, okay, this person has gone off the rails and this is just abusive. This is just being somewhat racist. They understand at a certain point that what they're saying, the overt overture, meaning how they're saying at that point, is going to subsume all the air out the room regardless of what they're trying to get across. This is not one of those things where somebody is looking at something where somebody makes a joke, and when the way they make the joke, people completely miss the context of what they're saying for the way that they're saying. This is not that. I'm not talking about this on this kind of just gray area level. I'm talking about where it's very clear that the overt meta-narrative of what's being said is to get across a very specific point. And yeah, if you're using hyperbolic racist language, people are not crazy for looking at us and saying, that guy sounds kind of racist. Now, I'm not saying that this necessarily applies to HB, and I'm not necessarily saying that him creating a rule saying that he is going to read all the super chats. Fair enough. If you make the decision, though, to stop reading one super chat on Hitler, though, I mean, at that point, you've set the precedent that there are certain super chats that you don't necessarily want to read. Why do the races want to get passed? Why do races want to get passed? And this is also for practical reasons. This is not just a free speech thing. You have 20 people in your super chat. Say you have 100 people in your super chat. You have 3 being blatantly racist. Now, either the rest of the group, meaning you're going to have certain people in that group who says, okay, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Meaning you're going to weed out a certain number of people who are in your chat, and you're going to make that chat very specific to a certain demographic and a certain point of view. Now, so I don't think I'm necessarily crazy in saying this. If you're going to make this case of free speech and people should be able to debate and everything else, well, if you're debasing those people are not going to want to have a debate or conversation with you. So I understand where you're coming from. I understand this thing of people being able to say what they need to say. But at a certain point, if you actually want to have a conversation with people, then that conversation needs to be cut in ways where those people can even hear what you're saying and not necessarily taking this kind of overt abusive language. I agree with Orthenium, man. I'm sorry. I agree with Orthenium. Bushy man, at least you don't condone racism for peer pressure reasons. That's funny. Surly and funny. I like it. To me, the Enrique has agreed. So many charges against so many who are still in power, walking around freely. Carter did the first of the deregulations, deregulated trains, truckings, and airlines. Oh man, Democrats doing the job of Republicans. That's amazing. That's amazing. I did not know that to be there. I did not know that. Also, deregulated savings and loan. I did know that one. Hence Reagan scandal. I do remember that one. We'll all be unemployed restaurant workers soon enough. That's when the revolution comes. You're more optimistic than I am on this. Devon Mead. If we're talking YouTube channels, I love secular talk. TYT has the most volatile YouTube comments. Yes, TYT does. Yeah, they do. Reagan was the begging of the dismantling of company pension plans also. He gave corporations so much power over the employees. It was a sad time. And we've continued it. We're still in that mode. That's still our understanding of the reality. The New Deal Democrats have been pushed away. You have these corporatist Democrats who, for the most part, agree on the way Republicans see the world. Yeah. Yeah. Immensely problematic. I agree, man. To be Enriquez, I think many still have blinders on about our presidents. Watch Noam Chomsky talk about how every one of these presidents changed under Nuremberg. Yeah, Chomsky is right about this, man. When you hear me make this case that all these guys should be dragged before the Hague, they should be dragged before the Hague. I mean, think about what we do. An African dictator could do something in that country and they would drag that dictator in front of the Hague and they would wag their finger at him and everything else. Macron, the French prime minister, jumping around the country angry because there's slavery in Libya and pissed off that people are kind of pointing to him saying, hey, you remember when you, the United States and United Kingdom, decided that you wanted to destroy Libya in order to take the gold and the oil reserves from that particular country? Well, yeah, now they have slavery there. That's kind of your fault. He's angry about that. We're going to go after the people who are doing the slave trade. Yeah, but what about the people who allowed that to take place in the first place? What about that? You attacked the country. What about that? What about that? You attacked the country under false pretense. You destroy that country. That country is a dumpster fire, and now they have slave trades. They never actually get to the people who are causing this stuff. They always get at the guy at the very end of the process. That's what I'm getting at. Noam Chomsky is making this point that the things that these guys allow for, going into one country after the next without constitutional or international justification to do so, these things are crimes. These things are crimes. And they're crimes that are continuously unpunished. The president of the United States becomes a king and he can do whatever he wants. Congress completely abdicates its responsibility to check the power of the president. Fuck rule of law. Who needs that shit? Who needs that? Rule of law is a pain in the ass. That's just for little people. Yeah, that's just for the little people. Open-air slave markets are the birth pains of a democracy. I know. I know. I know. He put sarcasm. Yes, I know. I was like, oh, wait a minute. He's okay. No, he can't be being serious. And it's sarcasm. Microsoft Word support. There needs to be accountability on that level. Yes, it does. And honestly, I would be far more brutal than Chomsky in redressing this. So would I. The president of the United States invaded a country and murdered 1 million people. And pursuant to murdering these 1 million people, he started torturing to try to create a link between 9/11 and Saddam Hussein. He sent Colin Powell out to lie to the UN because Colin Powell was the only one that had any level of legitimacy in that particular government. And he sullied the reputation of Colin Powell in the process. Embarrassed him immensely. The refugees that are fleeing from those countries went to Europe, causing destabilizing the European systems themselves, while all these people having this kind of acerbic reaction, putting these right-wingers in office in this kind of rebuff of these immigrants coming into the country from the war zones that we ourselves helped create. When Obama went into office right after that, we're looking forward. We're not looking back. And then later on coming out, we tortured some folks. It's torture against the law. Why are you so folksy with the whole thing that this guy was torturing other human beings. Why are you okay with this? And how can the Justice Department turn a blind eye on this? Well, the Justice Department can turn a blind eye on this because Obama wanted the powers that were accrued in the office under the Bush administration, including the drone program and everything else. And Obama didn't necessarily want to be held to account by the next president, who also loved the powers that the previous president accrued in that office and in no way wanted to give back those powers, and on and on and on it goes. He killed a man. He killed an American citizen and sent Eric Holder out there to make an argument that due process under law didn't necessarily mean with the judicial branch, that the president of the United States can make the determination on whether or not he alone can murder another human being. Fucking amazing. Absolutely fucking amazing. And the media hears the president of the United States executed an American citizen without due process of law and gives him a pass on this. Completely gives him a pass on this. It's a fucking kill list. Killed an American citizen and then turn around and kill the guy's kid. Killed his kid. It's amazing. They give themselves a pass. They give themselves a pass. It's fucking amazing. Fucking amazing. Bullshit, man. You know what's fucked? The War Authorization Amendment signed in 2001 has been used to justify 7 wars without change in 17 years. That's fucked. Rand Paul's speech was awesome on this. Yes! It makes no sense. Like, they would use it to justify Somalia, Syria. And you're like, wait a minute. That was for Iraq. That was for Iraq. Congress never challenged it. Congress never said shit about it. One of the other Democrats said something about it. The last one who said something was Rand Paul and gave me that awesome speech in the well of Congress. Did a sit-in on Congress. And finally they said, okay, fuck it, fine. We'll give you a speech. We'll give you a speech. They called Donald Trump everything but a child of God, saying the man was a maniac, saying he was going to eat your babies, saying he was going to kick your puppies, all of the stuff that they ran on, saying it was Trump and Russia, Trump is colluded with Russia, Trump is going to destroy America. And yet, when it came down to it of, do you want to check the president's powers, this maniac that you said that's running amok, do you want to check his powers? Their answer was no. The answer was no. Democrats included. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. He called on Congress to actually vote on military actions of wars, do their job. Yes, he did. Rand Paul should get credit for that. He should get credit for that. I don't know why that guy beat him up, but he should get credit for that. I'm not laughing at the guy. I'm not laughing at him to get beat up. I'm not laughing at him to get beat up. But come on, that was kind of weird. It's kind of weird. His neighbor jumped the guy. Jimmy Dore has this fucking hilarious clip talking about Rand Paul getting beat up by his neighbor, and he's not going to give him medical support because of socialism if he tries to give his son medical support, and how love is expensive and all this other stuff. Is just fucking hilarious. He said, they beat my boy. They beat my boy. These lefties beat my boy. Bullshit, man. Yeah, it's such a shame that Democrats have not rebuilt on the anti-war platform. So sad. MIC owns both parties. Yes, agreed. Military-industrial complex. Agreed. Agreed. Things were also ramping up in Lebanon. General Wesley Clark's list of countries we're going to invade. Yes, to be, I saw that list. That, you know, that's another thing. That's an amazing statement that he made. Mind-blowing statement that the United States had already pre-decided the wars that was going to take place. And at no point did media look at this and says, holy shit, this country is going to go into all these different countries. They didn't say squat. Didn't say squat. The guy is a fucking general. And he's on the inside. He's telling you exactly what is going to take place. And that is exactly what has taken place. Nothing to see here, folks. Nothing to see here. It's fucking amazing. Yes, it's fucking amazing. So when I got nerve damage from the factory I was not taken care of, I was given over to counter meds and told to keep working. That sounds about right. Sounds about right. Orthidium. And Jesus said, fuck thy neighbor. It's just way too expensive. Yeah. Book of Psalms. Book of Psalms. It's a well-known book of Psalms. Iran is the only one that have not yet touched. Isn't that shocking? Well, we have touched Iran. The United States is saying that a potential hack should be responded with military force. I mean, you had Democrats screaming this shit left and right, that a hack by Russia that never took place should be responded with military force, that we should consider that an act of war. Under the same premise, you know, if we're looking at things honestly, where we're saying one thing, a 1 + 1, you know, is 2. We attacked Iran's nuclear facility. We put, what is Stuxnet, that virus that went into the thing to destroy their nuclear facilities. We pretended, I mean, that thing was there destroying their facilities for months. Nobody knew what it was. It just so happened that it got out on the internet with that virus. America, in coordination with Israel, set out a virus in order to attack the infrastructure of Iran. This was known, and based on the own methodology that the United States goes by, this is supposedly an act of war. So yeah, I'm just saying. Just saying. I worked in the aircraft industry 33 years. I saw a lot retired now 7 years. Glad to be done. Good for you, man. Good for you. If you can have a life, go have a life. Sure can happen when you're working 40, 50 hours a week. Amy Smith. These are wars the neocons want the United States to vanquish for Israel's interests. Since 9/11, we are tools of Israel. I don't think we're tools of Israel's, man. I think we're giving them billions of dollars. I don't think it's one of those things of tools. The United States is not giving them billions of dollars so they can control us. It's the other way around. And don't get me wrong, it's not that straightforward of one is controlling the other. Both of these things have interest. Meaning, Israel has a political interest in aligning itself with the United States, in the sense of, yes, we're going to get money and resources and everything else, and we're going to get a fucking awesome military, and we're going to have nuclear weapons, and yes, we're going to have a great old time. Kind of great old time occupying somebody else's territory and stealing somebody else's land. From the United States standpoint, they get an attack dog in the region. They get an attack dog in the region. Things that the United States can't necessarily do, Israel can do on the United States' behalf, even though Israel wouldn't necessarily say they're doing it for the United States. These things work in tandem. It's not one or the other. It's not one or the other. More tools of specific plutocrats. Yes. Nikki G, more like a partnership. Yes, Nikki G, I agree. More like a partnership. Edward Stilwell, Jamal, lots of 90-hour weeks. Yeah, that's not a life at that point. That's not a life. We have aligned ourselves with Israel and Saudi Arabia. You know how wild that is? The United States will come out and say, we believe in freedom and justice, and we believe in democracies, and we believe in this, and we believe in that. You're aligned with fucking Saudi Arabia. The United States would say openly attack Venezuela. Would be okay with Honduras. Honduras at this point is just a puppet client state that's a lawless region that the United States is controlling and putting in puppet government in that particular country. Venezuela, oh, they're bad guys. Venezuela's bad guys. Venezuela won their election. That government won an election. But they're bad guys. That being said, the United States will work with Saudi Arabia, who chopping off heads, and in some cases there have been no crucifying people. And yeah. It's like we work with some groups, but not others. Some groups we absolutely hate. We think they're horrible. Gaddafi was a horrible, horrible person. And yeah, Gaddafi wasn't necessarily a great person, but at the very least, the people in that country had homes and they had a certain amount of the standard of living. There's certain people who we like, who are dictators and horrible people and who would have an apartheid state in the open air ghetto, and others that we don't. In which case, those people are horrible people, even if those people are providing for their citizens. Yeah, it's arbitrary. It just depends on who we're aligned with and who we're working with and who's doing favors for us and who's doing what we said they're supposed to do. It's arbitrary. We don't have any fucking standards. It's like this has nothing to do with reality. Orthidium, disagree with HA on enthusiasm over effing over the remains of the so-called peace process, but still respect his tenacious spirit. Yeah, he's a tenacious guy. That's you know, I disagree with HA on the Israel thing. I massively disagree with him on the Israel thing. I couldn't disagree with him more on this. Even the bringing in the Hamas thing, because ultimately Hamas is just reaction to Israel's irritant. But he's tenacious. He's definitely tenacious. I think both of us agree that Democrats are the problem. And his tenaciousness in going after those guys have been this kind of just absolute. It's just been absolute. Yeah, there's a tenaciousness about him, man. And I don't necessarily think the tenacious thing is a bad thing. Even when I disagree with him, even when I think he's in the weeds. Give him, give him credit for what he does. All right, oh Jesus Christ, this is going for like an hour and 20. I wanted to do a UFO one. Oh, I wanted to do a UFO one. All right, I'm just going to show this, and I'll talk about this one later real quick. A secret Pentagon program investigated UFOs. A New York Times political report that Senator Harry Reid championed an advanced aerospace threat identification program, which was launched in 2007. The Defense Department says the program ended in 2012, but in truth, may still be out there. This is them joking around the thing. But essentially, they were investigating UFOs. Essentially, they were seeing aircraft that could go from point A to point B, and they couldn't necessarily identify the proportion. Harry Reid was championing a program that investigated this particular thing. The military has investigated UFOs and that type of stuff before, and I have to be honest, I'm always enamored by it. This seems to be the most natural thing in the world to question, and I think it points at an unreality for us. We're on a ball hurling through space at remarkable speeds, being flung around a ball of energy that's spewing out heat and gas, and we're using that heat and gas in order to live. We're part of a system, a solar system. We're part of a physical matter reality of space. Oftentimes, we don't necessarily look at ourselves from that context. We look at ourselves just from the individual context to which we work and interact with. So we go to a job and, we do things in order to eat, and we come up with entertainment and all this other stuff. But ultimately, the real truth of it is we're on a ball flinging through a void, or for the most part a void, using this ball of energy to survive ourselves. We as a society at some point looked up at the stars and says, hey, we're going to send somebody to the moon. And we built a ship, this tin can with a bunch of rockets and explosives on the back of it. And we figured out how to play around with that technology enough to put a man in a tin can and send that man X amount of thousands or hundreds of thousands of miles away to our closest celestial neighbor, the moon. That's us. That's after a small degree of time in regards to science, just a few hundred years. That's us. What does it look like for a civilization that's maybe been out there for 1,000 years of science? 2,000, 3,000, 10,000, 20,000. What does it look like with a remarkably advanced civilization? And in the same way that, a caveman has 2 coconuts and he has a wire, and the extent of his understanding of the world maybe revolve around that particular piece of technology, he would have no context to understand how a cell phone works or the mechanism to which a cell phone would work. Even if he had it, even if he studied it for 1,000,000 years, that caveman would never understand the technology of what that technology was doing and how that technology worked. It would appear as if it was magic. What does it look like when you had 10,000 years of science, 15,000? I'm just kind of making this point that it is not insane. It's the sanest thing in the world. It's the most rational thing in the world to question what does it look like when some other civilization has had science that has gone far longer than our schoolyard science. What does it look like to them? What does the universe look like from that particular context? And when you ask the question of, well, what does it look like and can those people get here? The answer, of course, is yes. It is an insane argument that scientists have have everything that scientists know right now is everything that there is to know. That is an insane argument. One pillar of physics, for the most part, have kicked away this idea of a material universe. Our understanding of this is shallow. Something else that is longer to understand this stuff and longer to understand these things, and different ideas in regards to proportion, and different ideas in regards to the way that technology evolved, different even ideas from the way they themselves as a civilization evolved. What if they didn't evolve in this competitive way? What if they evolved a cooperative society, meaning that society worked in tandem with one another? What if that species was telepathic? What if you add in all of these different things that could be attributed to that particular species, and how that particular species would evolve, and how that particular technology will look, and It's an open door. It's an open door. It's the most natural thing in the world for these guys to look up at the sky and say, what's there? And at the point where the military institutions are being buzzed, when they point that these UFOs are literally in military documents, there's this craft up there freaking people out. When you have testimony from one person in aerospace and military after the next coming out saying, yes, this is what we saw, this is what took place, this is the technology that I worked on. I would say, look at the Hillary Clinton WikiLeaks documents. All throughout that document is stuff on UFOs. John Podesta being a big advocate for it, saying, you know, the biggest failure in the Obama administration was not releasing the UFO files. Hillary Clinton walking around with a UFO book. All of these things. This stuff is not, it is the most natural question in the world to look up at the sky and say, is there something like us out there? And if they evolve differently, if they behave differently, all of these things, all of these different permutations of civilization that could have evolved in this way, do they have the capacity to get here? How can you answer that question? No. How can you answer that question? No. It is impossible to answer that question. No. Because you don't necessarily know what you don't know. And you would imagine that science and technology will continue to evolve. And if they had a cooperative society that didn't have all these wars and they didn't waste all these resources on murdering each other and all this other stuff, they would have a vastly different look at the universe. And they would have a vastly different way in which they probably do their science and their technology. I'll leave it at this because this has gone massively too long. But imagine Earth for the moment in a different way. Imagine an Earth, the planet Earth, where many of the cultural things that you have right now, many of the stressors in a society where people have lack and all this other stuff. Imagine that that wasn't the case. Imagine that Earth got its shit together and Earth became somewhat of a rational society. And technology was used to the benefit of humanity, meaning making sure that people had their needs met, and at the point where people had their needs met, you allow people to be people. There's work in that society. People still do work, but people also have the capacity to go to school whenever they want, go to school for however long they want, to engage in activities that they themselves want to engage in, meaning something that they love to do, they just love to do it. If that's software, if that's building, if that's art, whatever. Whatever. There's no God above that makes your society the way it is. The amount that your society produces and everything else, if it's determined by the things that that society needs, then allow people to be people beyond the point that the society meets its needs. Well, the point that I'm making here is, think of all of the resources, and by human beings, I would say human beings is the most magnificent of resources. All of the poverty that's around the planet, what? The 60% of the public or the population lives off of $10 a day or something, some insane amount. Think of all the poverty. Think of all the war zones. Think of all these people getting killed and hurt and maimed and injured and sleeping on the streets and all these other horrible scenarios that these people are in. Think of all the crime and the degradation. Think of all the population, the pollution, environmental degradation, all of this stuff. Think of all the problems that are associated with our particular capitalistic system and the way it functions, this maximization of profit. What if it wasn't that way? What happens when all of that capital has the capacity to go to school when they want to go to school? Think of all the Einsteins. No, all of them are not going to be Einsteins, but think of all of the Einsteins. Think of all of these people who would have all of these different ideas on how to do things if those people were nurtured and supported throughout the world, as opposed to being in these dire war zone, income impoverished scenarios. Can't pull yourself up by your own bootstraps when you're being bombed every other day. What does the world look like? I'm saying you have a fundamentally different world when people can express what they want to express onto the world. Meaning that when a person gets to go to school for as long as they want and the things that they get interested in, and they don't necessarily have to worry about being impoverished or not having their needs met, they can function to what they want to function and contribute to things that they themselves want to contribute. I'm saying innovation will skyrocket. You've unleashed the aspect, this creative potential of humanity at this point, not because there's a dollar that's the intermediary between those things, but because you have people who just love doing what those people love doing. You still have work. Human beings are just built that way in the sense that we ourselves will find things that we want to do. Those things would be considered work. You can have a fundamentally different society in the way that society functions. And I'm saying this idea that people do things purely because of the impetus of cash. Cash is the limiting factor in this. You have poverty instantiated throughout the entire globe. You have people working as fucking fry cooks, human beings. Immense potential, working as fry cooks. As human beings, as a society, we should come together and say, let's make sure people have the things that they need. And at the point where people have the things that they need, allow those people to be free. Allow those people to be free. Use technology to make sure that you supply those needs. Automate that technology. And to do it in an intelligent way, meaning you have this constant focus on, let's make sure people have the things that they need and make sure those processes are automated, so that stuff will be dirt cheap. We can supply those things to each and every person in our society. And yes, allow those people to be free and allow those people to express and create the world that they're going to create. I keep pointing to this situation. Think of all the poverty that we have in our planet. Think of all the war zones we have in our planet. Think of all the poverty we have in the United States. And what's the situation when those people are not have to worry about being ill, don't have to worry about having a house, don't have to worry about having a job? That these things are, there's certain aspects of a society that we don't allow people to go below. And beyond that, you have the ability to express your will and your potential. Have at it. You have society's blessing. You're a human being, and as a human being, you have value, and that value is going to be espoused in law, and we're going to support you in trying to be the most actualized person that you yourself can be. Think of the potential of that particular world as compared to our own. I'm making this point that in a different world, in a different environment, in a different society, there's no reason why people have to evolve in this particular way. None at all. People are not any particular way. Ultimately, people behave a particular way based on the society and environment that those people are in. In a different world, with freedom and prosperity and the ability of people to be able to actualize themselves unleashed. That is a magnificent planet. That is a magnificent planet. And this idea of science, innovation, technology, you're talking about ripping the chains off of those things when you allow the rest of the people in the population to actually contribute to those particular fields. So I'm not necessarily shocked that the military is looking into things that are buzzing around the planet. The population may be kind of oblivious to this stuff, but I don't think the military is oblivious to it. If they have things buzzing their centers, buzzing their nuclear centers, or buzzing their military bases, I would imagine they're going to be fucking curious about what's buzzing their nuclear base, whether they say it loudly or not. Harry Reid is not crazy for this, any more than Podesta or Clinton or any of those other people who were involved in the UFO literature in the Podesta leaks. So I'm going to do a separate one on that by itself, because I thought it was fucking interesting. I thought it was absolutely interesting. But this has gone on for a very, very long time. So I am going to end this. Let me see. Hello, wonderful Jamal and friends. I'm so excited to see you awake. Hurrah. Moni G. Oh, man. I was about to stop. I was about to end it. I was about to end it. You got here just at the very end. Alright. Alright. Withidium. Yeah. Alright, yeah. I'm talking about UFOs. You guys are on something else. He's like, I don't give a shit about these UFOs. Let's get back into getting and so on and forth. Deminji, go get some sleep, man. The world will be screwed up still in the morning. Yeah, it is morning. It's like 4 in the morning here. Yeah. I'm about to end it. I'm about to end it. I'm sorry, Moni G. I'm sorry. It's like, I'm here. Yes, I'm here. Oh, everybody's leaving. It was like closing hour. It's like you get to a bar and at the last, UFO is a great 40-20 check. Yes, UFO is a great 420 check. Yeah, that's my point. Bullshit, man. That's my point. I haven't did a 420 chat in a while. That would be a great one. That would be a great one. That's one of my favorite topics. UFO is always a good talk. Yeah. Oh, it is almost 420. It's 3 minutes away. 3 minutes away. All right, let me kill this, and I'm going to start back at 420. I'll be back. Good pointing out.